I want to say a few words about my father and why I believe this weekend is so important. But don't worry, unlike Lionel, I won't go on all night long.
A queen fastens a brooch to her coat, and almost no one in the room understands what they are looking at. The year is 2012. Inside a private room at Clarence House, Camilla, then Duchess of Cornwall, tries on a piece from the royal collection, a diamond and emerald necklace that once belonged to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. But before it sat in the Queen Mother's collection, it spent 16 years on someone else. Diana wore the piece to a gala at the Vienna Berg Theatre in 1986, and again at the Royal York Hotel in Toronto during a 1991 state visit to Canada. Camilla does not wear it as a necklace. Around 2012, she quietly has it refashioned into a brooch. No statement, no unveiling. Just a private decision that will not surface publicly for years. Then it surfaces. Photographs travel fast. Royal watchers recognize the emeralds within hours. And a piece of jewelry becomes something much bigger than fashion. A flashpoint in a story that has been building since long before Diana died, long before Camilla married Charles, long before William became Prince of Wales. Hi, viewers. Quick question before we go on. If a piece of jewelry once belonged to someone's mother, should it ever be worn by their father's new wife? Type yes or no in the comments and tell us why. Because online, the reaction splits straight down the middle. Some royal watchers call it disrespectful, a woman stepping into the wardrobe of her husband's late first wife. Others push back hard. The necklace was never Diana's personal property. It belonged to the crown the whole time, on loan, and it returned to the royal collection the moment Diana died. As the wife of the future king, Camilla has every right to wear it. Both sides are technically correct, backed by real royal protocol, and that is exactly the problem. Because the brooch is only the visible tip of something much bigger. A real, documented, decades-long legal and emotional argument over what Diana, Princess of Wales, actually owned outright, what belonged only to the crown on temporary loan, and who gets the final say over an inheritance that was never as simple as a jewelry box. Some of it is fashion, most of it is not. Some of it played out inside a courtroom nobody photographed, sealed from public view, only opening when her younger son turned 30 years old. That story does not begin with Camilla at all. It begins 9 years before the brooch, with a single document signed in Diana's own hand, 1 month before her 32nd birthday, at a time when she has no idea she will be dead within 4 years. The original document was signed by Diana on the 1st of June, 1993, 1 month before her 32nd birthday, and amended in 1996. She has no idea she is writing the document that will control her son's lives for the next 21 years. The next day she signs something else, a private letter of wishes, asking that all of her jewelry and 3/4 of her chattels pass to her 2 sons, with 1/4 of the rest earmarked for her 17 godchildren. Her mother, Frances Shand Kidd, and her sister, Lady Sarah McCorquodale, are named executors and trustees. In 1996, after her divorce from Charles becomes final, she amends the will with a codicil. On the 31st of August, 1997, Diana dies. The will names William and Harry as her primary heirs, with the estate to be held in trust until they turn 25. Then something happens that almost no one hears about for years. Without notifying the parents of Diana's godchildren, most of them minors, the executors petition the probate court for a variance, delaying William and Harry's distributions until age 30 instead of 25, though they can draw interest from the trust starting at 25. Diana's estate is valued at around £21 million, about $31.5 million at the time, netting £17 million after taxes. Meanwhile, an entire collection of about 150 items, including the wedding dress, 28 other gowns, jewelry, letters, family paintings, and the score to Candle in the Wind, stays in the custody of Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, touring museums for most of the year, with proceeds reportedly benefiting the Diana Princess of Wales Memorial Fund. It is not released, not fully, not for 17 years. Only on Harry's 30th birthday, in September 2014, does the gown finally change hands, along with the rest of the collection. William separately chose a gold Cartier watch that had belonged to Diana's father as his own keepsake, taken from her belongings at Kensington Palace shortly after her death. For 17 years, a legally binding, court-approved vault holds a dead woman's most personal possessions just out of her own son's reach. And by the time it finally opens, a very different woman is already sitting closer to the throne than anyone expected her to. In a 1995 television interview, Diana said the line that would define Camilla Parker Bowles for years. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. The words land across Britain overnight. Camilla becomes, in tabloid language, the other woman, KVIA. She stays largely silent. Diana dies in 1997, and for a while, Camilla all but disappears from public royal life. Then, slowly, over the better part of a decade,
and hopefully provide maybe a different side to that others haven't seen before.
the story starts to shift. In April 2005, Charles and Camilla plan to marry in a civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall. The date has to move by 1 day at the last minute, after Pope John Paul II's funeral is scheduled for the original wedding day. When they marry, the palace announces Camilla will be known as Princess Consort, despite having a right to the title of Queen, a recognition of the sensitivities around a title that was destined for Diana. For the next 17 years, Camilla builds a different reputation: literacy campaigns, domestic violence charities, steady public appearances with almost none of the drama of the 1990s. Then, on the eve of the 70th anniversary of her accession, Queen Elizabeth II does something only she has the constitutional authority to do. She settles the question herself, in writing. Her message states that it is her sincere wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when that time comes. It is a short sentence. It ends a question that has hung over the monarchy since 1996. The woman, once branded a homewrecker in the national press, is now, by the reigning monarch's own words, 7 months from becoming Queen of the United Kingdom. 14 months later, at the May 2023 coronation, Buckingham Palace confirms the final step. Camilla becomes simply Queen Camilla, sharing the exact title once expected to belong to Diana. Camilla's transformation is real, documented, and decades in the making, built appearance by appearance, charity by charity, until the tabloids ran out of reasons to call her anything else. But acceptance by an institution is not the same thing as acceptance by a memory. Elizabeth could rewrite a title with one sentence. She could not rewrite what an entire country still remembers. A tiara sits in a vault beneath Buckingham Palace for 18 years, and almost nobody notices it is missing. The piece is the Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara, made by Garrard in 1913 for Queen Mary, later inherited by Queen Elizabeth II and gifted to Diana, who wears it constantly for state banquets, diplomatic receptions, and the state opening of Parliament. It's said the tiara was heavy enough to give her headaches. She wore it anyway. After Diana and Charles divorce in 1996, she has to return the tiara, since it was only ever a loan from the Queen, not a gift. It disappears from public view completely. Kate Middleton is first seen wearing it in 2015 at a Buckingham Palace diplomatic reception, and has since worn it more than a dozen times, becoming, just as it was for Diana, her most worn piece. Here is the detail almost nobody points out. Diana's most iconic tiara did not go to Camilla when she became Duchess of Cornwall in 2005, and it did not go to her when she became Queen Consort in September 2022. It went to Kate. The pattern holds elsewhere. Diana's engagement ring, presented by William to Kate as her own engagement ring. Diana's sapphire earrings, also frequently worn by Kate. A diamond Cartier bracelet of Diana's, worn by Meghan Markle during her and Harry's 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey. Royal jewelry historians who track these details closely note that out of everything linked to Diana's time as Princess of Wales, Camilla has been photographed with only one connected heirloom, a Queen Alexandra feather brooch tied to the Prince of Wales title, a piece that today is worn by Kate instead. Nobody in the palace has ever announced a formal rule about this. There is no statute, no written policy, nothing signed and filed in any court, unlike the version that once governed Diana's actual estate. And yet, appearance after appearance, year after year, an unmistakable boundary holds anyway, without a single public explanation from Kensington Palace or Clarence House. Which raises the real question underneath the fashion pages. Is this boundary an accident of timing and protocol? Or is someone, quietly, making sure it stays exactly where it is? The answer, it turns out, traces back to a single afternoon in February 2022, when one elderly woman decided to settle far more than just a title. Sandringham House, the 5th of February 2022. Elizabeth is 95. having recently kept busy reviewing Jubilee plans with her personal secretary, weeks removed from a bout of COVID, and on the eve of the 70th anniversary of her accession, she settles a question the royal family has avoided answering directly for 17 years. The message goes out under her own name. When, in the fullness of time, my son Charles becomes king, I know you will give him and his wife Camilla the same support that you have given me.
But it was an accident, so they asked me to go and open the East Stand when it was built at about 2 weeks' notice because they'd been let down. I can't remember who by. And as it happened, the horse was lame, so I wasn't competing at the weekend.
Then the line that matters most. Camilla will be known as Queen Consort. 7 words, and an entire argument that started in the 1990s effectively ends. Charles responds publicly the same day, saying only that he and Camilla are humbled by the gesture and that Camilla has been his steady support through the years. Notice what does not happen. William says nothing publicly that day. No statement, no appearance, and royal correspondents covering the announcement point out that a decision of this size would not be released without the monarch consulting her direct heirs, Charles and William, suggesting both agreed and felt the public was ready to accept Camilla as queen, which means the silence is not absence. There is an irony buried in the timing. In 1997, the royal family was widely criticized for its initial public silence in the aftermath of Diana's death, with one newspaper demanding, "Your people are suffering. Speak to us, ma'am." 25 years later, on the subject of the woman blamed for that marriage's collapse, Elizabeth does the opposite. She speaks early, plainly, in writing. Here is the real story underneath the headline. This was never really a fight about jewelry. It was always a bigger question: who controls the meaning of Diana's legacy once the institution around her has completely changed? By February 2022, the monarchy is not the same one Diana left behind in 1996. Elizabeth is in her final year. Charles is about to become king. William is already Prince of Wales in every practical sense except the paperwork. And Camilla, once the most unpopular woman in Britain, is 7 months from a crown. Elizabeth's sentence does not erase Diana. What it does is draw a line between 2 separate inheritances blurred together in the public imagination for a generation. One inheritance is institutional titles, protocol, the crown jewels. That now belongs, formally, to Camilla. The other inheritance is personal, a wedding dress, a gold Cartier watch, a tiara that gives you headaches. That inheritance was legally sealed in a vault-like trust for 17 years, and when it finally opened in 2014, it went to exactly 2 people, William and Harry. 2 inheritances, 2 different sets of rules, side by side inside the same family for 2 decades. The palace has weathered wars, abdication crises, and the sudden death of the most photographed woman on earth. But dividing an institution from a memory, cleanly, publicly, without offending either one, may be the hardest thing it has ever had to manage quietly. And the quietest part of the entire story is still to come. Prince Harry sits across from Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes and says one word about his stepmother that will follow her for years. Dangerous. He explains why. Camilla, he says, needed to rehabilitate her image after decades as the woman blamed for breaking up his parents' marriage, and building that image meant trading information with the British press. With a family built on hierarchy, and with her on the way to being queen consort, there was going to be people or bodies left in the street because of that, he tells Cooper. It is January 2023. His memoir, Spare, hits shelves days later and becomes the fastest-selling non-fiction book in history. In it, Harry calls Camilla the villain. He calls her the third person in his parents' marriage, a direct echo of the exact words Diana used about her in 1995. He writes that he had complex feelings about gaining a step-parent he believed had sacrificed him on her personal PR altar. Then comes the detail that surprises even long-time royal watchers. Harry reveals that back in 2005, before the wedding, he and William stood together and pleaded with their father not to marry Camilla at all. 2 brothers, united, trying to stop it. 18 years later, only one of them is still saying so out loud, because here is where the story splits. William, who once stood beside Harry making that same plea, has said almost nothing publicly about Camilla since. No memoir, no interview, no 60 Minutes sit-down. While Harry turned his grief over Diana into a very public case against his stepmother, William chose the opposite path. total public silence, even as his own brother called their father's wife dangerous on American television. Royal sources describe the Queen's reaction to Spare as measured. One aide reportedly told the Sunday Times it was not stamping of feet or gnashing of teeth, more of a quiet, weary response. But friends close to Camilla have since suggested the words did land, and land hard.
Lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother. Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
This is the real cost of protecting a memory, not a courtroom battle over a vault of jewelry. A public, permanent break between two brothers who once agreed on exactly one thing, now divided over how loudly to say it. Harry chose to speak. William chose to stay quiet. And that single difference in strategy may explain more about who actually holds power inside the modern monarchy than any title ever could. Because silence, it turns out, can be its own kind of message. A camera rolls inside Windsor. Catherine, Princess of Wales, sits alone, looks straight into the lens, and says 4 words that stop the entire country. This has been a huge shock. It is the 22nd of March, 2024. For 2 months, the palace has said almost nothing, only that Catherine had abdominal surgery in January for what was believed to be a non-cancerous condition. The silence let rumors run wild online, doctored photos, wild theories. Then this video, filmed quietly at Windsor, ends it all at once. She explains that tests after the surgery found cancer and that she has already started preventative chemotherapy. She asks for time, space, and privacy for the sake of George, Charlotte, and Louis. King Charles, undergoing his own cancer treatment since February that same year, releases a statement saying he is proud of Catherine for her courage in speaking publicly the way she did. 2 future monarchs of the same family, fighting cancer, in the same year, at the same time. For a woman constantly measured against Diana's memory in the press, this is the moment the comparison stops feeling like fashion commentary and starts feeling like something else entirely. Diana redefined what royal openness could look like by speaking honestly about her own struggles decades earlier. Now Catherine, standing in the same tabloid spotlight, chooses honesty over silence too, on her own terms and her own timeline. She finishes chemotherapy by September 2024. By January 2025, she announces she is in remission and returns gradually to public duties, visiting the very hospital that treated her. Royal commentators have pointed out that Catherine's choice to speak on video, filmed and controlled entirely by her own household rather than leaked or forced out by press pressure, marks a shift in how this generation of royal women manages their own story. Diana famously felt she had to fight the institution to be heard. Catherine did not have to fight anyone. She simply spoke, which is its own kind of quiet statement about how far the monarchy has actually moved in a single generation. But Catherine's calm did more than reassure the public. It exposed exactly how much weight had shifted onto William's shoulders alone, managing a wife in treatment, 3 young children, an ailing father on the throne, and an entire institution watching to see if he could hold it all together without breaking stride. A single number appears in a report released in June 2025, and it explains more about William's real power than any jewelry ever could. £22.9 million, nearly $31 million. That is the distributable surplus William received as Duke of Cornwall for the 2024 to 2025 financial year alone, according to the Duchy's own integrated annual report. It is his 2nd full year holding the title, inherited automatically the moment his father became king in September 2022. The year before that, his 1st year, the figure was even higher, £23.6 million. The duchy itself, founded by King Edward III in 1337 specifically to fund the heir to the throne, now controls more than $1 billion in land and assets across 23 counties, farms, coastline, and commercial property. It is officially classified as a crown body, which means it does not pay corporation tax the way an ordinary business would. William pays income tax voluntarily on what he draws from it, a practice his father also followed, though the exact amount has never been made public. Buried inside the duchy's centuries-old legal structure is something called bona vacantia, Latin for ownerless goods. Under a law dating back centuries, if someone dies in Cornwall without a will and without traceable relatives, their entire estate does not go to the government. It goes to the Duke of Cornwall. The duchy states publicly it does not personally profit from these estates and instead donates the proceeds to charity, though the mechanism itself, a private royal estate legally inheriting the property of dead strangers, remains one of the least understood corners of the British Constitution. None of this required a secret decree, or a sealed document, or a vault. It is published every year, laid before Parliament. Exactly as the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall Accounts Act of 1838 requires. And yet Cornwall residents living inside the estate itself have publicly complained of feeling abandoned, watching a landlord worth over $1 billion while their own towns struggle. The jewelry was never really the story. The real inheritance, the one carrying actual institutional weight into the next reign, was sitting in a filing cabinet in Whitehall the entire time, ready to move to William the instant his father took the throne. In 2023, William stands in front of a housing project in Newquay, Cornwall, wearing work boots instead of a suit, and announces something no Prince of Wales has done quite this way before. He calls it Homewards, a 5-year program launched across 6 locations in the United Kingdom, built to prove that homelessness can actually be ended locally, not just managed. It is, by his own description, one of his defining projects. As heir to the throne, alongside the Earthshot Prize, his environmental initiative launched back in 2020 to reward practical solutions to climate change. Neither project involves a single jewel, a will, or a courtroom. And that, royal commentators have increasingly argued, is exactly the point. For years, tabloids have used a phrase to describe where the monarchy is heading. A slimmed-down royal family, fewer working royals, fewer palaces in constant use, a tighter, more focused public mission built around a small number of causes rather than a long list of ceremonial appearances. The idea did not start with William. Prince Philip reportedly discussed versions of it decades earlier. But William is the one now positioned to actually build it, which brings the entire story back to the beginning. The brooch, the tiara in the vault for 18 years, the will that took 17 years to fully open. None of it was ever really a battle between 2 women over one man's memory. It was a preview. A preview of a monarchy that increasingly separates what belongs to the institution from what belongs to the family, that lets Camilla hold a crown while Kate holds a tiara, that lets Charles keep his marriage while his sons keep their mother's most personal belongings, sealed away until they were adults enough to decide what to do with them. Royal historians differ on how deliberate any of this really was. Some argue it is coincidence, decades of individual decisions that only look like a pattern in hindsight. Others believe William has been quietly, consistently drawing lines around what is his family's and what is the crown's since long before he ever wore the title Prince of Wales. Either way, the pattern holds, and patterns, unlike rumors, do not need anyone's permission to keep repeating themselves. A green cloth falls away in the sunken garden at Kensington Palace, and 2 brothers who have barely spoken in months stand side by side again, if only for one afternoon. It is the 1st of July, 2021, what would have been Diana's 60th birthday. William and Harry unveil a bronze statue of their mother together, surrounded by 3 children meant to represent the reach of her work around the world. Around them stand Diana's own siblings, Lady Sarah McCorquodale, Lady Jane Fellows, and Earl Spencer, the same brother who once guarded her wedding dress at Althorpe for 17 years. The brothers release a joint statement. "Every day we wish she were still with us. It is for one afternoon proof that whatever divides them, this one thing never has." Everything this story has traced. The brooch reworked in private, the will locked by a courtroom for 17 years, the tiara returned and then reborn on someone else's head, the sentence, "one dying era's queen" used to settle another era's argument, the millions flowing quietly through a 700-year-old duchy, all of it points to the same conclusion. The monarchy did not solve the problem of Diana's memory. It learned to hold 2 truths at once instead. Camilla wears the crown. Diana's sons wear her memory. Neither side had to lose for the other to be true. Years from now, most people will forget the exact pound figures, the tiara's full history, the precise wording of a 2022 statement. What they will remember is simpler, that a family spent a quarter of a century learning the difference between an inheritance and a memory, and that difference turned out to matter more than any single object ever could. If this kind of story pulls you in, the deeper royal history always does, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And down in the comments, tell us, which piece of this story surprised you the most?